I would like to state a rebuttal to the claim that Adolf Hitler was a socialist. Political spectrum arises from the question what to do about inequality of wealth. Parties that want the redistribution of wealth are called the left. Parties that oppose the distribution of wealth are called the right. The radical left, like communists, want to seize the wealth of others. The moderate left, like socialists, want to achieve redistribution of wealth through taxation and public spending. The moderate right, like conservatives, oppose the distribution of wealth by the government, but they are okay with the free market. The far right, like fascists, are against the free market because the free market sometimes leads to redistribution of wealth through natural processes. The far-right parties want to use the power of the state to prevent socio-economic changes. Theoretically, in the free market economy, hard-working and entrepreneurial individuals can enrich themselves, while lazy and stupid get impoverished. The problem is that people who are lazy and stupid but happen to be born into wealth and privilege do not want to be impoverished. They try to use their wealth and power while they still have it to influence the government to pursue policies that help them to maintain their privileged position. Normally, these government interventions are quite benign. They have the form of protective tariffs, regulations, or bailouts. Occasionally, circumstances are such that only total control of the economy can keep the establishment in business. Such a situation existed in Germany after the First World War. German armaments industries were huge. They could sustain a world war. There was a lot of capital invested in the steel mills and factories. After the war, there was no market for their products because German army was small and other countries were not interested in buying armaments from the losers. German industrial military complex either had to switch to commercial manufacturing and accept lower profit margins, or they had to start another war. They chose the latter. They reached into the sewers, they found Hitler there, and they made him a ruler of Germany, because Hitler was the only German politician willing to violate the Treaty of Versailles and to rearm Germany. Hitler's rearmament saved German armaments industries. Companies such as Krupp or Focke-Wulf still exist. In the global economy, their executives meet all sorts of people, including Jews. It must be awkward to do business with someone after sending their grandparents to the gas chamber. Thus, it is understandable that German capitalists want to deny their involvement with Hitler. The simplest way to do so is to declare Hitler to be a socialist. Admitting that Hitler was a puppet of German capitalists would make them responsible for his crimes, whereas nobody can blame capitalists for the actions of a socialist. However, the lie about Hitler being a socialist cannot be tolerated because this is the lie that brought Hitler into power. If Germans had known that Hitler was going to bring Germany to ruin, they would not have voted for him. Germans voted for Hitler because Nazi propagandists convinced them that Hitler was a socialist. If we want to ensure that Nazism will never rise again, then we need to make sure that everybody understands that National Socialism had nothing to do with socialism. People who claim that Hitler was a socialist generally use two arguments. The first argument is that Hitler self-identified as a socialist. While there is no dispute that Hitler claimed to be a socialist, to argue that he really was a socialist is equivalent of arguing that Hitler was right. Nazi propaganda was a bunch of lies, but these lies are interconnected because the Nazis supported one lie with another. Therefore, if someone rejects one Nazi lie, then he will also reject the others. However, if someone accepts one Nazi lie as being the truth, then he eventually will accept the others. For example, there is no sense to reject the free market and replace it with the state control unless someone happens to believe that the free market is just a cover for the Jews to please the society. Therefore, if someone wants to believe that the Nazi regime was a form of socialism designed to protect German workers from exploitation by the Jews, then this someone must also believe that the Jews were leeches who deserved to be killed. The second argument is that the Nazi regime introduced some social programs that benefited ordinary Germans. This argument is deceptive because every German government had similar programs, and they still do, regardless of which party is in power. Since social programs were not unique to the Nazis, it is misleading to use them as a criterion to characterize Nazi regime. What was unique to the Nazi regime is the amount of armaments purchases. No other German government had such insane armament program, and it was not because of the war. Hitler started his rearmament as soon as he captured power. In 1933, nobody wanted a war, nobody expected a war, nobody was preparing for a war. The original purpose of Hitler's rearmament was to keep German armaments industries in business. Second World War was the consequence of German rearmament. Hitler had to conquer and loot other countries to pay for his armaments. If someone spends all his resources to buy a gun and has no money left for food, then he has only two options. He either must rob someone or he will starve. Hitler's rearmament placed Germany in a position where they either had to conquer Poland and steal Polish food, or they had to starve. Indeed, Hitler was forced to start the war, although not by the Jewish conspiracy, but by the consequences of his own policies. Throughout the entire German occupation, Polish farmers were forced to send food to Germany for free. Germans call this Kontingenten. Under Nazi regime, Germans became so dependent on stolen Polish food that when German forces were pushed out of Poland, but before the post-war economy kicked in, there was a famine in Germany. This is why National Socialism is classified as far-right, despite their name and rhetoric. Nazism is classified as far-right because their policies benefited a part of the establishment, but they were detrimental for everyone else. Socialists want to take from the rich and give to the poor. Hitler did the opposite. He took from the poor and gave to the rich. Polish farmers were not rich. Hitler took the fruits of their labor and sent it to Germany to feed Goering. Jewish second-hand traders were poor. Hitler took everything they had before he killed them. Krupp was rich before Hitler came to power. Under Hitler, Krupp made a lot of money manufacturing tanks and submarines. Prussian officers were wealthy. Under Hitler, they became generals and wealthier. An ordinary German soldier who spent the war freezing his ass on the front line, then returned to Germany without an arm or without a leg, to find his house destroyed during bombardment and his wife prostituting herself for food, did not benefit from the Nazism. To call Hitler a socialist, one must disregard well-known facts and focus solely on Nazi-owned propaganda. Such an approach is called willful ignorance.